And welcome back, everyone, to its last call. Last call, the alcohol only on the lastcallpodcast.com. And joining me here, we NFL draft is coming upon us, so we got to get some more people from the draft professors and also cover the teams to tell us what's going on, who's covering who. And this gentleman here is, if you want to know about the NFL draft prospects and the Carolina Panthers, this is a man to go to. He has his finger on the pulse and is dived is as dialed in as anybody here. I give you from Panthers Pulze podcast. I give you Jordan Hunt. So Jordan, we'll start off here with the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to pull this up here quickly so everybody can see it. What last year it was like, okay, they gotta get better. They gotta get better. Now they've gotten better. It's like, how tough is it trying to figure out in your mind like what you want them to draft? Because there's not like a huge need, but
Yeah.
it's like things here there, but like to see like improvements.
Yeah, I think for me going into free agency, I wanted to see how aggressive they were going to be on making this team better because last year I know we won the division, but I don't think anybody, if you ask anybody in our fan base, if we felt last year was going to be the year where we started to turn it around, I think we were still thinking a year out. I know, especially me. I was thinking we were still a year out. I was always 2026 is the year where the Panthers can take a leap forward into potentially being a contender, especially for the NFC South. So as we won that last year, I think kind of accelerated things a bit for Dan Morgan and company. So for them, being aggressive in free agency this year was kind of important to them because they felt like, hey, we won a division where we really weren't good. We weren't a good team. Like we were a team that can compete, sure, in certain games, which was obviously a step forward, but we weren't a good team. And when I think of good teams, I'm thinking of teams that can, win two games into the playoffs. I mean, yeah, we won a division, but for me, I think we ended the year losing three out of the last four games, right? So there was obviously still a ton of room for improvement. I think going into the offseason, edge room and linebacker room were the two biggest needs. And for me, like the first 2 months of the year, I was scouting all the edges, all the linebackers at pick 19. Um, so, and then the first day of free agency hits and we signed Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd. So now I'm taking all the edges, all the linebackers off my board at 19 because those positions were immediately filled on day one of free agency. So, yeah, it kind of makes things a little tricky now because we do still have some areas of improvement. We could still add to the wide receiver room. We could still add to the tight end room. Obviously, offensive line is still a question mark because Ikem Ekwonu, our left tackle last year, who showed great progress and was somebody that we were looking to lock up long term gets injured in the playoff game. A patellar tendon injury is something that for offensive lineman is as almost as catastrophic as a running back tearing his ACL. So that was something that was really painful. But we did sign Rasheed Walker to a 1 year deal to kind of be the stopgap. But for me, I think he's good enough to be a long term starter. So depending how he does this year, he could be the long term answer. Um, but yeah, I think there really isn't anything completely off the board. I know I said I removed edges and linebackers off the board for 19. But I really wouldn't be shocked if they fell in love with a guy like a Jacob Rodriguez or a Key Mesidor at 19. So I think the only thing that's like truly off the board at 19 is quarterback right now.
All right, so let's dive into the first some of the guys that have been sort of linked to the Panthers because I want your opinion because some of them they're all controversial in many ways. So
Yeah.
Panthers fans go, yeah, draft this guy, no, draft this guy. So let's start with the most controversial guy I'd say in the draft without any baggage in a sense.
Yeah.
Peter Woods, beginning of a draft. I know Jordan, you, Bill Sparks, Jim Wilkins, even John Vogel, and even Mel Kiper. Like, hey, top five pick, top
Yeah.
five pick. Peter Woods is a top five pick, and then the season happened, and then it's like, okay, well, he's still a top 10 pick, and now it's like, oh, he's still a top 15 pick, and now it's like, well, there's something like he could fall the second round. Like, what happened? Like
Yeah.
when you watch the tape, is it effort? Is it size? Like, why is he all of a sudden gone from like impact franchise defensive tackle to now? Well, he might go to the second round.
Yeah, I think for me it was a multitude of things, right? Like you said, with his size, he played defensive end last year at 330. And I thought he was more impactful playing 330 at the on the edge than he was this year at 295, 300 pounds playing nose tackle, which was wild to me that he was even lined up at nose tackle at that weight. If he was gonna drop the weight that he did, I would have just kept him outside at edge. And I know they brought in Will Height from Purdue to play edge. Cool. Okay. He still shouldn't be playing nose tackle at all, especially at that size. So I think that was one thing that was an issue for him. I can't remember who it was, but somebody put out, and this was back in January, put out the time to throw against Clemson this year for all quarterbacks, and every single quarterback in across the 13 games they played had a quicker time to throw than their league average. So if a quarterback had a 2.4 time to throw on the season, when they played Clemson, it was closer to 2.1 or two flat. So teams were identifying, hey, with TJ Parker and Peter Woods and Demonte Capehart and all these other guys across the line of scrimmage, we have to get the ball out quick because if we don't, they're going to wreak havoc similar to they did in 2024. So that was also something that was impactful for Peter Woods. So again, I don't think he was always the best pass rusher. He was an above average pass rusher in 2024, but putting him at nose tackle and then him playing in a system where teams were looking to get the ball out quick, I think that impacted him even more. So his production dropped drastically even more. So, you go from a top five, top 10 pick where he's above average pass rusher, he's elite against the run, he's great at shedding blocks, and then all the production goes away, and then he measures in smaller at the combine and his pro day, and he doesn't do the testing, so we don't know if he's a good athlete or not. So it's just a multitude of things that really have hampered Peter Woods. For me, he's still 17th on my big board. He's still my defensive tackle one. Now, I will say, if Caleb Banks didn't have the foot injury, Caleb Banks would be my defensive tackle one. So it's kind of an asterisk on him being DT one. But I still have a first round grade on him. I still believe that he's gonna make an impact somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be in Carolina because he doesn't fit like the prototypical size measurements that Dan Morgan and company look for. But I do think he's somebody that would be impactful to the Panthers, playing next to Derek Brown.
Could they bulk him up? I mean, as you say, he's smaller than his size, so I'm guessing
Yeah.
that means he's what 6'3", 290.
So I think he measured in a little like 6'2" and a half, 293 was what he measured in at.
So that sounds, for a casual fan, that sounds simple. Just throw him in the weight room,
Yeah.
steak, chicken, barbecue ribs. Just put some weight on that big boy. Next thing you know,
Yeah.
hey, he's 330. So I mean, if you're Carolina, like, why can't you just go? Well, saw the 2024 tape, and at 330, he was a monster. Let's
Yeah.
get him back to 330. Let's just put some weight on, some muscle, and this could be a bigger guy.
Yeah, I think a lot of concerns right now is, what is his playing weight? I've had the discussion with Caden Proctor as well, is his weight fluctuates, right?
Yeah.
So when a guy his weight fluctuates between years and that drastically, 35 pounds is a lot of weight to lose between seasons. So if his weight's fluctuating that much, what is his ideal weight? And you don't know that, using a top 20 pick on somebody that you don't know where he's going to play and where he's most effective weight wise is very scary. So I think, yeah, if you can get him to, I say 6'2" and a half, but I round it up to 6'3", 6'3", 315. That is ideal size for a three technique in today's NFL. So again, I think he could get there, but do general managers believe that him being at 315 is where he's most effective? Do they think he's most effective at 330? Right. And then it becomes a question game at that point. But again, I think he's he's very polarizing. You hit it the nail on the head. He's one of
Yeah.
the most polarizing prospects in this class because you just don't know. Like I think if you look at it, like I said, just his 2024 tape alone, he would go top five, top 10 in his class, right? But then you throw in his 2025 and it's like, this guy's a second rounder. I think if you just looked at his 2025 tape and didn't know anything else before about Peter Woods, you would say, yeah, this guy might be top 100, which is scary, you know?
I guess here's the question. I know you can't answer it. None of us can because we don't talk to them specifically. But if you're a GM, like, first question out of your mouth should be like, what happened then? Why did you guys regress from Clemson was, fighting the national championship hunt in 2024. Then this year, they barely are over 500. Like, I'm guessing how much, if you're Dane Morgan, are you asking Peter Woods, like, what the hell happened? Like, why did you and everybody else just stink up the joint?
Yeah, and you know what? That's another thing because the entire team regressed. It wasn't just Peter Woods, it was, TJ Parker, it was Cade Klubnik, it was the offensive line, Blake Miller, who we'll talk about later. All these guys regressed in a way that I mean, before the season, you see mock drafts, there were five projected first round picks for Clemson coming into the season. And now there's guys that you might get two, maybe three, right? I think obviously the talent is still there, but when you have five guys that are potential first round picks and you can't get above 500, yeah, I think there's a question on maybe it was coaching, maybe it was scheme for these guys because they did bring in a new defensive coordinator from Penn State. So maybe that was it. But again, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but you can't just wash away 2025. You can't just wash it away. So again, I think he's still got a first round grade, but at the end of the day, I don't know if he's high on the Panthers board. I think he's probably still on there somewhere, and in a trade back scenario. But I can't envision with them the way the guys they've brought in for defensive line, he would be high up on his board or on their board.
All right, now this guy might be a trade candidate to move up, but he might even fall because Jermond McCoy is. If you thought Peter Woods, there was like, okay, the tape. We have no tape on Jermond McCoy for 2025. He didn't play at all. He sat out the entire year, sat out the combine. He finally did work out for teams and workouts, but he was out with a HCL injury for all of 2025. So we only have 2024 tape. So right now, if you're the Panthers, how much is this sort of like if he falls? Let's say he gets past the Cowboys, he falls all the way to 19. If you're the Panthers, how much do you worry? Like, okay, maybe he's fine, but he hasn't done any contact, any kind of football since 2024, and could this happen all over again? Is he going to be still sharp?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It'll be almost 2 years from the last time he's actually had contact by the time, the season starts and everything. So, and I do think the Panthers have a little bit of PTSD when it comes to ACL injuries because of Jonathan Brooks, who really hasn't seen the field in the 2 years since they've drafted him. But again, if you're talking about just pure talent and what you saw on the 2024 tape, you're not going to see many cornerbacks that are better than Jermond McCoy. He fits all the measurables. He fits all the athleticism questions. The tape was good. He really never really struggled. I think the only time I really saw him struggle in 2024 was against Jeremiah Smith. And if we're being honest, everybody struggles against Jeremiah Smith,
Yeah.
right? So I can't really hold that against him. So his tape in 2024 was as good as you're going to see from a cornerback prospect over probably over the last 5 years. But I do think the ACL injury is scary because you just don't know where he's at. And I know he ran a 4.3 at his combat at his pro day, and that was fine. Um, and that's really not what bothers me. What bothers me is, him breaking down when a running back's coming around the corner outside and he jukes him. And how does his knee respond to that? So um, there's going to be some question marks. But if you're going just purely off talent, again, with like similar to Peter Woods, he's somebody that before the season, before the ACL injury, you're looking at a top five, top 10 pick easily. And now, if he falls to 19, I think you're walking away with a steal. Now, fit wise, does he really fit what the Panthers are looking for? I don't know. He's more of a press man corner. Whereas, and I know we have J.C. Horn who can play in press man. Mike Jackson can play in press man. But Evero's more of a zone guy. He loves to have his cornerbacks playing in zone. And then also McCoy's not really a nickel. He's not a slot guy. He can't move inside. So would they be willing to move J.C. Horn inside full time so you get the 19th pick on the field as much as possible? I don't know if that's really what they want to do. Again, it can make you can make it work. I'm a true believer in drafting the best talent and telling your coaches to figure it out, right? Um, but again, I don't know if that's what they need per se. But if you're talking about making a strength stronger, the Panthers had one of the best cornerback duos in the league last year. So adding somebody like Jermond McCoy, who again his 2024 tape is some of the best you'll see, you put him in there, and you can even bring him along slowly if you want to. Let him play behind J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson, who is getting older, and just let him take over eventually down the stretch. I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it at all. When they brought him in for the visit, I was, I was shocked a little bit, but actually pleasantly surprised, and pleased because he's not somebody that I had on my board prior to last week. I didn't. When they brought him in for the visit, I was like, oh wow. So now I'm, rewatching his tape prior to because I was watching his tape last year because I thought he was going to come back in 2025. There were reports that he was going to come back in November, and it just never happened. So, yeah, somebody that like this to pair with J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson, I think would be really good, really fun. Um, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I like McCoy.
How high does he go in a perfect world? Let's say it's like if you had to bet, somebody said, "What's the highest he's going to go? What's the lowest he's going to go?" Like, where do you see him? Because I've heard some people say he could go to number five, but this is a Harbaugh pick, cornerback who, as you said, shut down corner. He can have it, and Harbaugh has carte blanche. He doesn't have to worry about getting fired. I've seen him go as low as 32 to Seattle because the medicals, people are worried, and Seattle might just be that team that goes, "Yeah, we just want a Super Bowl. Screw it, we can do this." So,
Yeah, we
where
can
do you
afford
see
it.
him? Like how high is the ceiling? How low is the floor in terms of his draft stock?
I think his name starts getting buzz around 9 to Kansas City. You're talking about a team who just lost both their cornerbacks in the offseason. One was a trade, the other one was free agency. So I get them wanting to replace their guys immediately, and he's one of the better ones to do it. I could see him going 12, like you mentioned, to Dallas. I think Dallas has a very strong need at outside cornerback. So he's somebody that can definitely fit there. I think after 9, literally every team up until probably like you said, I don't see him falling out of the first round. So from 9 to 32, every team can look at themselves in the mirror and say, I could use this guy. It would not shock me from 9 to 32. I think, the Ravens at 14 is very intriguing. Putting somebody opposite Nate Wiggins because they play Marlon Humphrey inside. That's a need for them, depending on how Mentor views their cornerback room. I think the Jets need somebody. They don't really have anybody in that room right now. They traded away Sauce last year. They didn't have any interceptions in 2025. So how does Aaron Glenn view Jermond McCoy if he's on the board? I would love to see him in Brian Flores' system and at 18. So again, I think every team from 9 to 32 could use him, and I think it makes sense for probably 90% of those teams as well.
Well, here's another guy, as you said. If Peter Wood's tape, we're looking going, oh, what the hell happened here after 1 year? Avion Terrell, not as bad, but still, like, there
Yeah.
were times you look at Terrell going, what the hell's going on here? I mean, it was Jekyll and Hyde. There's games you look great, then there's games like, oh, man, they're throwing all over you guys. I get it's partly the pass rush, but
Yeah.
what you saw, like, what went wrong with Terrell? And is he still cornerback number 3, or does he start falling down because Chris Johnson's getting a lot more love?
Yeah, I think with the hamstring issue at his workout recently, I know, teams said, he ran a 4.6. I watched his tape. I don't believe he's a 4.6 guy. I think he's, worst case, he's a 4.52 guy. But still, I think, when you think about a 5'10, 5'11 cornerback who's 185, 190, you want him to run close to that 4.4, as possible because to make up for the lack of, size. So I could see him falling out of the first round. I have a first round grade on him, but I could see him falling out because I do like Chris Johnson a lot. I think, some teams could like Colton Hood more than Avion Terrell because he is smaller. And I think that's probably his biggest issue outside of the speed thing because I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think it's just his frame, right? It's similar to to Pons, being 5'8", he's a true outlier. But Pons is very physical at the point of attack with being 5'8". He's got some muscle on it, some extra girth on him. So I think with Avion, he does struggle against bigger receivers. They can if they get their hands on him, try to push him off, he's going to struggle. Now, I will say he's very sticky in coverage. If you're just talking about just running routes and not getting in a hand fight, which probably benefits him the most, he's one of the better ones in this class. Like he can run the route for a receiver 9 times out of 10. But it's like somebody like a Drake London with the Atlanta Falcons. If he gets matched up with Drake London, I'm not gonna be happy
Yeah.
if there's not safety help over the top, because I think Drake London is one of the more physical. Puka Nacua is another one, physical wide receiver who has some size on him, that likes to hand battle and likes to hand fight. So one of those guys like that can definitely give him some trouble. Now, if you want to play him inside and at the nickel, even then it's gonna be tough because it's getting to the point where nickels are getting bigger, or slot receivers are getting bigger in today's league. Like, I think Puka was one of the more utilized slot wide receivers in the league last year. So I don't think you can just hide him inside either. So yeah, he didn't have as bad of a year as T.J. Parker or Peter Woods, but there were some concerns for me on tape as far as bigger running backs coming around the corner, because he's a willing tackler. He'll come down and make the tackle, but bigger running backs like a Derrick Henry with his small frame, I think that would, and obviously everybody struggles with Derrick Henry, so I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say like, oh, that's an indictment on him, but those bigger running backs could give him issues. Bijan Robinson is somebody, another name to throw out there, who welcomes contact, and Avion is a guy like I would not hate the pick at 19, but I think it's more of a trade back scenario for me. So whereas Jermond McCoy is somebody you might have to trade up for, Avion is probably a trade back candidate where if you get pick 28 and some extra picks, cool, I'll take him there.
Again, it's like Peter Woods. There's probably the casuals who are looking, going, let's get him bigger. Now, year in the weight room, as you said, he can stick with anybody, which means
Yeah.
he has the speed and the hips and everything. So just get him bigger. Year, just weight room, he'll be better. Like, again, if you're the Panthers, and you look at this guy like, all right, he wants to tackle. He will tackle. He's not. He'll bounce off people at times, but isn't this like, all right, this is the investment? We give him a year. Then, as you said, Mike Jackson, you can let go of him and Horn, and then you have your duo for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit tricky when it comes to cornerbacks adding weight like that, because it does take away some of their fluidity, right? And I think that's one of the areas where he does excel. He's got very fluid hips. He can turn, get in and out of his breaks. Um, you just want him to get stronger, and I don't know how much weight I want him to put on while getting stronger, if that makes sense. Right. I think, adding 5 pounds is cool, but I don't want him at 5'10", 200 pounds playing cornerback for me, because I do think that takes away from his, what he excels at. So getting him to like 5'10", 5'11", 190, that's cool for me, but still, I think there's still going to be those question marks where he does have a slender frame, and when you match him up on bigger cornerbacks, it's gonna be a bad moment for him. So that's where I do think he could fall out of the first round, because a lot of teams aren't going to want to invest that highly in somebody that they're not convinced can fully play boundary, right? I think with Mansour Delane, like you think about Mansour Delane, he's smaller, but Mansour Delane is somebody who, excels in man, he excels in zone, he can play inside, he can play outside, he's a above average athlete, which I think Terrell's an above average athlete too, but he's not on the same level as Mansour, right?
Yeah.
And I think Mansour also has the component where he's coming off one of the better seasons, so that also props him up. Whereas Avion took a step back a little bit in 2025 in comparison to 2024. So
All right. This is for the offensive people in the Panthers. This is probably the dream scenario. It's Kenyon Sadiq falls to 19. Hey, this tight end. Oh my God! Look, they'll have fun. And yet he can't. But he's not a blocker. He's willing, but he's not a great blocker.
yeah,
So here comes the question: is a tight end like Sadiq worth the pick at 19? And is he a guy who the Panthers can get at 19, or do you look at him and go, yeah, they might trade up because all of a sudden, like Dolphins, Chiefs, maybe even like the
The Ravens.
Rams might go, hey,
Yeah.
oh, Kenyon Sadiq is our quarterback. That's going to be some fun.
Yeah, exactly. For me, this whole process, Sadiq's been my number one target, right? Even when there was need for an edge or, a linebacker, it was always Kenyon Sadiq for me because I felt like he kind of he kills two birds with one stone, right? I think he's a tight end, but he's somebody that can play in the power slot for us. So with the Panthers who run 11 personnel, the seventh most in the league last year, you can line him up in the slot while still, being in a position where you don't really have to bring him off the field to run the ball, right? So, like you said, I don't think he's an inline blocker, inline tight end. I don't think that's where he's going to be best utilized. So that's the only really drawback for me is, taking a tight end this high where he can potentially get pulled off the field if we want to run 12 personnel. If we want to go jumbo, am I going to put in Kenyon Sadiq? Is that somebody that I want like, hey, you're lined up with a Miles Garrett, right? Or any of these tight defensive ends in the league, and it's like Will Anderson one-on-one with Kenyon Sadiq, and it's 4th and 1. Well, guess what? You're probably going to lose that battle, Kenyon Sadiq. And it's not to say like he can't block. Like you said, he's a willing blocker. It's just when you're smaller like that, as at the tight end position, he's not somebody like a Sam Roush who's 6'5", 270. He's 6'3", 240. And as good of an athlete as he is, that's small for a tight end. And I think that's another drawback for fans too. So again, I would love to have. I think he's the ultimate chess piece in this class offensively because you can, like I said, you can line him up out wide. You can put him in the backfield. You can put him in line and run play action because again, I've seen the plays where he actually does block. I just don't think he's most effective there. He can block, but he's just not most effective. I would like to see more production, but again, like in my notes, I have lacked ideal production for a first round tight end at Oregon, but I have an extra asterisk next to that because if you looked at that Oregon roster last year, they are absolutely loaded,
Yeah,
right?
like I
Like
was going to say,
Malik
they spread the
Benson,
ball around.
yeah, they Dante Moore was excellent at getting everybody involved. Whether it was Malik Benson, who probably almost anywhere else, Malik Benson's 1,000-yard receiver last year, right? They have two freshman running backs who combined for 1,500 yards last year. So again, the production was less than ideal, but I understand why it was the way it is. Um, so again, for me, I think he can come in. He replaces Jatavion Sanders immediately, and he also replaces Xavier Legette immediately as the wide receiver three, to a certain extent, right? In theory, because and I actually found this. I was looking at some stuff back in February for us. We brought in Daryl Bevell from Miami, right? He was the passing game coordinator in Miami for 3 years, I think. During his time in Miami, Jonnu Smith was a Dolphin, and Jonnu Smith had his best year ever. He had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns in Miami under Daryl Bevell, right? And I think if Jonnu Smith can have that type of production, why can't Kenyon Sadiq? I think Kenyon Sadiq, obviously the Vernon Davis comps are fair. I think at his floor, he's Jonnu Smith plus, right? So if Daryl Bevell can, get this guy in his offense and utilize him the way they did in Miami, then you have a dynamic piece that, if you get 700 plus from your tight end in year one or any year really, you have a good tight end room. And for me, I think that's why I like him the most of the offensive production or offensive players we've brought in. Now, do the Panthers feel the same way? I don't know. He hasn't been brought in for a visit. I don't think we met with him. We might have met with him at the combine, but everybody meets with everybody at the combine. So you can't really you got to take that with a grain of salt. So again, the 30 visits haven't all been announced yet. And you even after everything's done, you don't get all the 30 visits announced. So maybe they did meet with him. I don't know. I just don't know where they view him at because also they're high on Oscar Delp. So like do they view, adding somebody else in the first round and then adding tight end later? Does that make more sense to them as far as the value component goes? I don't know, but for me, if Kenyon Sadiq's the pick at 19, and I've seen all the mocks I think are very high on Kenyon Sadiq. If he's the pick at 19, I won't be upset at all.
The final question on this is he as good as, let's say, Brock Bowers, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, where if you're the Panthers, all right, we'll give up a first and a third to move up to 10 or 8 to get him. Is he worth that, or is he one of those guys look and go, he's the next level? Maybe Sam Laporta, maybe
McBride. Yeah.
Hunter Henry, but with more speed. Like, is he that kind of tight end?
Yeah, he's not on the level as Brock, Tyler Warren, and Colston Loveland. I think those guys are in their own tier as far as tight end prospects over the last decade. Maybe even Kyle Pitts is in that aspect too. Um, I think yeah, he's closer to the Laportas and the Trey McBrides and the Hunter Henrys and then the Harold Fannons. Whereas if this was a stronger draft class, and this is a good draft class, I think it gets a little misconstrued, but this is a good draft class. But if it was top heavy, similar to like 2024 where Brock Bowers fell to 14, right? If Kenyon Sadiq was in that class, he falls out of the first round. I have no doubt. I don't think that based off of I have a first round grade on him, but I think in in a more stacked draft class, he probably doesn't go as high as he's projected right now. I think um like for me, I wouldn't be shocked if he went, top 15. Like you said, the Bucks have shown interest. The Ravens now with likely gone and um Mark Andrews getting older. You have the Rams who've shown interest. The Chiefs who now have an aging Travis Kelce, somebody that can come in and replace him eventually. I wouldn't be shocked if he went to any of those places, but for me, I think in that, 18 to 24 range is probably where he's best suited.
All right, this is on Bruce Feldman's freak list. So
Yeah.
let's talk about Caden McDonald. If you want to run stuffer, this is your guy. He is just like a tank who comes in there 6'3", 323. He just clogs the lane up. Pass rush, not so much. So again, you're the Panthers. You're looking around like, okay, Rams ran on us a bit. Even Tampa Bay at times could run on us a bit. Oh man, we still get Philly in our division. You still have the 49ers, and McCaffrey. You still have even the
The
Saints.
Lions.
They're adding. They have now Etienne and Kamara in a perfect world. Does Cade McDonald make sense for them at 19, having just a guy like, all right, just clog the middle and let our defensive ends just crash?
I think Caden McDonald would be a good player. I think he's a really good player. I have a second round grade on him. Um, So I don't think he's a bad player. I think the lack of pass rush is what keeps me lower on him than the consensus, right? Because like you said, excellent run defender. Like you're not going to be able to run on him and Derek Brown. If you line up a trio of Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, and Caden McDonald along the interior, good luck running on them. Because it's not going to happen. Now the drawback is, on 3rd and 7 and Matthew Stafford has all the time in the world to throw because we can't get a pass rush from our interior, then it gets a little shaky. So for me, somebody that's a little bit one dimensional, I don't know if I would take him top 20. I think for me, like his ceiling is probably where he starts to get some calls is probably Buffalo. I think that makes a lot of sense for them because you get somebody like a Deion Walker who can rush the passer. You move him more outside the three technique and have Caden McDonald, be the zero for them. I think that makes more sense than what we currently have because we have a run stopper, a couple run stoppers, as far as Bobby Brown and Derek Brown go. I know Derek Brown had 5 sacks last year, was probably his best year rushing the passer, but still had less than 35 pressures, right? So I want somebody, if I'm going to get somebody next to him, I want somebody probably similar to, Grayson Halton, right? I think that's probably the better fit next to Derek Brown. Again, like if we had somebody like a Jeff Simmons, or a Zach Allen or Leonard Williams interior, this is the guy you put next to them, right? If Caden McDonald is on the board for the Titans, because they just traded Devondre Sweat. If he's on the board for the Titans in the second round, you sprint, you run, you do whatever you can do to get up there and make sure he's the pick, because pairing him next to an elite pass rusher from the interior sets you up for so much success, right? So again, I think he's a great player. I just don't think he's necessarily what the Panthers need. And if we were in a different world, different dimension, he's somebody that probably would be high on the Panthers board. And I know we brought him in for a visit. We've met with him, and I think that's just due diligence because, like I said, he's a great football player. So I think I want them to meet with as many good football players as possible. I just don't know now if they trade back, that's different, right? You want to trade back to 26, 27, and still be able to get Katie McDonald while adding multiple picks. I'm fine with that scenario as well. I think that's the case for a lot of these guys we're going to talk about today. But if we're sticking and picking at 19, I don't think that would be the best use of resources going forward.
Can you coach him up? Like, let's say Todd Wash goes, man, let's look at this guy. He's like a muscle hamster. He can just throw people around. Yes, the pass rush needs a lot of work, but could he? If Todd Wash goes, I can coach him up. We can teach him more pass rush moves. Like, is it when you say his pass rush isn't there? Is it more coaching? Is it more athleticism? Like, I mean, because that'd be, I guess, for you, like a question. If we get this kid, can we coach him up? And next, in 2 years, he's a 6 or 7 sack guy.
Yeah, I don't know if he has the athleticism, the twitch to be a dominant pass rusher at the next level, especially. I didn't see it at Ohio State, and I know he was going, he was taking on double teams quite often at Ohio State, which is what he was asked to do. And I looked into that. I was like, why is he what is the issue for the pass rush, right? Like, why is he not rushing the passer as much as possible? And Matt Patricia came out and said it. And it was a big thing for him was when you have Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles behind you, I want you to eat up as much of these blockers as you can so they don't climb to the next level and let those guys free flow. And Sonny Styles said it in a recent interview that Katie McDonald made his life so much easier because he was able to free flow and make those tackles because he's taking on 2 to 3 guys at a time, which is really impressive. So I don't know if he could be a pass rusher at the next level, and you didn't get to see it because what he was asked to do at Ohio State. I do think he lacks the twitch and the athleticism. But again, with him being as strong as he is, and having all the size, there might be something there. And I wouldn't be shocked if if he's a 5+ sack guy over the next 3 years. But I just don't think it's if you ask me to bet right now, I think the odds are probably closer to 70-30 of him being what he is right now, just being really good at it. More so than being a pass rusher at the next level.
So is that worth it, though? Let's say the Panthers do take him 19. Do you really hate it, or is that one of those things where you look and go, all right, he might go a little bit higher, but still, he frees up Devin Lloyd. He frees up, Jalen Phillips. Evro and Watch don't have to worry about both of those guys getting creamed by guards. He will take care of the double teams. It's worth it, the lack of sacks for him to clog the run and two, allow, speedier linebackers to just run rampant.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it. Again, I think you're not going to be able to run on the Carolina Panthers if that's the case, right? I think you're going to be able to stop guys, and making teams one dimensional kind of does provide a pass rush because the cornerbacks in the secondary, they know, hey, this team can't run on us. They're going to have to throw on us, so just be prepared. And now we're in a better position because we know, with a coverage linebacker like um, Devin Lloyd and Trevin Wallace, guys who thrive in coverage more so than run support, you get somebody in there that can take care of the run and say, hey, just be mindful. These guys are you can drop into a nickel, you can drop into dime essentially, and be able to throw 6 DBs out there and say, hey, run on us if you will, because I know you're not going to be able to. So I think it would be impactful for the defense, and I think the defense would thrive at times. I'm just a little concerned that in those scenarios where, hey, you have a Matthew Stafford on opposite end. You have a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow, guys that can really dissect you from the pocket the longer they're there without being touched. That's where it gets a little concerning. Now, if we're going against, a rookie quarterback or somebody that's not as elite as the guys I just mentioned, and they can be, heavily influenced on their coverage when they hold the ball, say a Baker Mayfield, who the longer that Baker holds the ball, the more likely Baker's going to make a mistake, right? So yeah, I that would be fine, but I saw firsthand what it looks like when Matthew Stafford is given all the time in the world on the final drive in the playoffs, and he just dissected us. Like that last drive against the Rams in the playoffs was a masterclass. Like if you ask me when Matthew Stafford gets in the Hall of Fame, what drive was the most spectacular for you? I'm going to say it was that drive because he looked almost perfect because he wasn't getting touched at all. So you add somebody back there again who doesn't really touch the quarterback. Again, I think he would improve our defense in certain areas and probably make us one of the better run defenses in the league. But as far as rushing the passer, where we were ranked bottom across the board last year, um, it would hurt. It would hurt.
All right. So, when is a prospect too old? Because that's the question with Akeem Mesdo. There's people in the league who love him more than Ruben Bain. Because he is everything you want in an edge. He's
Yeah.
6'3", 259, 30, basically 32-inch arms, 6'6" wingspan. Like, this is a guy who was second team All American last year. He's a bit of an old guy though. He's already 25 years old, which means he'll be 26 after his first year in the league.
Yeah.
Again, he'd be a top if it was 2 years younger. He's a top 5 pick. Now there's talk he might go anywhere to as high as 15 with the Bucks. I've even seen him get mocked to the Panthers. I've seen him drop to the second round. But when you're scouting him, how tough is that? Where you're looking at the tape and then you got to figure, well, is this the best? Is this he has he hit his peak?
Yeah. And that's a really good question, right? Because like you said, if he was the same age as Ruben Bain, he doesn't have those short arms like Ruben Bain. The question marks as far as short arms go with Ruben Bain, right? He's 6'3", Ruben Bain's, 6'2", so he's bigger. I would make a strong argument that if Hakeem Essador was 22, 23, he goes number 2 overall. But then you add 2, 3 years to that, and it's like, hey, now has he gotten better every year? To answer your question about is this the best he's going to be? He's gotten better every year he's been in college. So I will say that his progression at Miami has been remarkable. Same as Bain. Those 3 years those guys have been together, they've been an elite tandem. And I think they also credit Jason Taylor to that. Um, my thing is, I think he's more of a win fit or win right now guy, right? Like if you're a team that says, "Hey, next year I can win the Super Bowl," and I don't think the Panthers are there yet. But if you're a team that says, "Hey, I can win the Super Bowl next year with the current roster that I have before the draft," then you draft Hakeem Messidor and you don't look back. You don't worry about his age because you know he's going to come in day one and make an immediate impact. Where I love Hakeem Messidor is in San Francisco, right? He's going to be your third pass rusher on day one, and he's probably going to be your second best pass rusher. But I know Michael Williams is, against the run, he's probably going to be on the field more often. But if you have a pass rush room of Akeem Messidor, Michael Williams, and Nick Bosa when he comes back from injury, I think San Francisco would be a dream for him to land there. But again, like I said, I go back to my scouting report on him. I really don't have a ton of weaknesses in his game, right? If you just look at his 2025 film alone, there are no outside of his age and the 2023 foot injury, which he's injured his foot a couple times. The big one was in 2023 when he missed almost all the season. I think he played 3 games. So outside of the foot injuries and his age, I don't really have any weaknesses for him, which is crazy to say, but for a guy that probably won't go top 20, right? I think I don't really. I know Tampa Bay needs a edge. Again, I don't think they're a team that's in win now mode, right? Losing Levante David, losing Mike Evans, losing Jamel Dean. I think they're going to take a bit of a hit this year. So, um, Akeem Messidor is from just as far as talent goes, as far as film goes, he's one of the best prospects in this class. But you cannot just take out the age and say, hey, we'll look past his age because he's not 23, he's
Yeah.
25, right? I know there's prospects like a Keldrick Falk, right, who is not even 21 yet. And there's a lot of people like, oh well, this guy can't rush the passer. Well, he had 7.5 sacks at 19, right? Who's to say he can't get better? And by the time he's 25, he's an all pro, right? So that's something that with Akeem Mesidor that for me it's like in the back of my mind. Whereas before we signed Jalen Phillips, I know he was heavy on our board. Dan Morgan really likes him being a Miami alum. He really loved what Akeem Mesidor brought, and I was getting to the point where I was on board with Akeem Mesidor at 19. But then signing Jalen Phillips, it kind of like, okay, you don't really have to go edge super early. So he kind of falls a little bit on my board. I think he's not somebody that I'm going to be upset if we take him because I know day one impact is going to be massive. He's somebody that you can line up, even if you line up Jalen Phillips inside a little bit, at 4i, you could put him at 7, 6, and he's going to rush the passer opposite Nick Scorton, and I think that would be a great tandem, right? You could line him up at 4i and leave Jalen Phillips out wide, and I think that would be great. But what do you get post first contract for a first round pick? By the time his first contract ends, he's going to be 30, right? And at that point, it's like, are you paying a 30-year-old edge on his second contract? And I think that's the only really drawback for me with Akeem Mesidor because even with Jalen Phillips, if he was 22 and he somehow made it to us at 19, which I don't think he would, if he made it to us at 19, you run to the podium regardless of what you pay Jalen Phillips, right? You want to put as many good players on your team as possible. But for the Panthers, where they're looking at transitioning to a more youth movement, we just released Ashawn Robinson, who I think he's not even 31 yet. He just turned 30. We released him. So obviously we want to get younger on both sides of the ball. Bringing in somebody who, after drafting two edges last year, would be your oldest edge. You know what I'm saying? Like he's 25,
Yeah.
Jalen Phillips is 25. So, you know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Quickly, KC Concepcion has become wide receiver number 3, thanks to Jordan Tyson's sort of what's called hammy injuries, because you're not really sure if Omar Cooper is a product of the system or not. There's some people say it's a great fit for the Panthers. He is everything you want. He is a pitbull mentality, quick twitch. He can be used all over the field, kick returner, punt returner. He's dynamic. Is he a fit for the Panthers, or is he one of those guys like, well, we have Xavier Legette, and man, KC's kind of short.
Yeah. I think he's the perfect fit for Carolina. Like I said, Kenyon Sadiq's my number one target for the Panthers. Casey Concepcion over the last month has become number two for me. I have him as my wide receiver 3, so I still have Tyson and Lemon over him. And I like what Colonel Tate brings. But for me, being an ACC guy, I've watched KC for years now, even when he was at NC State as a freshman. And this guy has been as productive as anybody in the country for the last 3 years. I know he had a bit of a down year at NC State in 2024, but his 2023 tape is exceptional. I think his 2023 tape could rival his 2025 tape at A&M, right? Because he's able to be utilized in so many different ways across the field. I know I said line Kenyon Sadiq up in the backfield, but you can line KC up in the backfield and he would still be effective. There was times at NC State he was lined up as a running back and he looked better than their starting running back, right? I think he has some of the best, quick burst off the line of scrimmage. He's very slippery. He keeps defenders at bay if they try to get their hands on him. Some of my favorite film from him was the Notre Dame game this past year against Leonard Moore. Now he wasn't matched up against Leonard Moore on every snap because Leonard Moore is more boundary. He was lined up in the slot a couple times too, so they didn't match up a ton, but there were probably about 5 to 10 reps where they were matched up, and I would say KC probably won 60% of those reps against one of the top prospects in 2027. So you saw it against Chandler Rivers when he was at NC State going against Duke. You saw it against Mansour Delane when LSU played Texas A&M. You saw it against Avion Terrell when he played against NC State or against Clemson. So against NFL talent, he has won and he's been productive against every one of those guys I just named. And there's probably some guys I missed. Um, yeah, like Kilgore and Cisse against at South Carolina this year. He had a really good game. So if you want to watch a really good game from KC Concepcion, go watch him against South Carolina because he truly dominated that secondary this year. And he's somebody that I don't, again, there's not a ton of weaknesses in his game. I'll pull it up real quick. Hold on one second. So for me, the biggest thing for him is, like I said, he does keep guys' hands off of him. But in press, if they are able to get their hands on him, if they have a longer wingspan, I saw it with Leonard Moore a couple times. He's able to throw him off his base, and when he gets off his base, how quickly is he able to get back? Right, I think he kind of throws off the disruption and rhythm because he is a rhythm wide receiver. He's one of those guys that likes to play in rhythm, doesn't like to get disrupted, and I think that's another area where you saw Chandler Rivers, who's smaller, and that's why I'm a big fan of Chandler Rivers, is able to get inside of him a little bit, get his hands on him quickly, and throw him off base. So he played against Duke twice while he was at NC State, and one game he had 6 targets, 0 receptions because Chandler Rivers was able to get inside in his grill and kind of throw him off. So if there was one concern I had for him, is probably his ability to fight off press and not be able to play within rhythm. Um, but as far as like as a returner, quick burst, he has some of the best route running in his class. He doesn't really have a weakness in the route tree. He can run every route tree, or every route in the route tree. So he's good at yak, contested catch. Now, I will say his concentration drops are a little concerning, right? He's had 7 drops over the last 2 years at A&M and NC State. But again, his if I and I can't remember who pulled it up, but his drop rate over the course of his career in college is 9.3%. If you line that up with some of the top wide receivers in the NFL today, he's in line with all those guys, right? Not Justin Jefferson and Amon Ra and Chase, but some of the guys like 12 through 25 in the league. He matches up with all those guys as far as career drop rate. So, do I think it's a problem? Yes. It's a little bit of concentration, but also it's you take into consideration his average depth of target is 15 yards, right? So he's obviously going downfield more often than not, and he played with one of the more inaccurate quarterbacks in the league in Marcel Reed this past year. So that also did hamper his ability because some of those balls weren't the best, and he had to slow down or he had to come back and fight coverage against these cornerbacks. So yeah, I would say watch the tape and look at his drops instead of just like pulling up on PFF and saying, "Hey, this guy had 7 drops last year.
Yeah.
Why did he have 7 drops?" Right? And I think it was a little bit different from 2025 to 2024. His 2024 tape was just drops. Like he was just dropping the ball. I think, like I said, it was more concentration than anything. This year was more like, "Hey, I have to slow down. I have to come back and fight against this guy," or I'm going downfield 30 yards and I'm trying to get a one-on-one ball and slips out of his hands because he's trying to hand fight with a guy who's coming up behind him. So um, I would say probably 4 of those 7 were on him, but the other 3 were things that were really out of his control.
How high does he go? Like right now, I mean, because the way you talk about it, he should be a top, 5,
15.
top 7 pick. He is
Yeah.
dynamic, and I get it. It's the size, but the NFL is becoming more about smaller wide receivers, a la Malik Neighbors, a la Cooper Cup. So again, like how high does he go? How low does he go? And if you're the Panthers, would you trade up to get him? Like if you start going, wait a minute here, Baltimore might try to snag him.
Yeah.
Jump up here to number 10. Or, hey, we'll jump up to number 11 here. Like, is this a guy that you would trade up for? Is he, or are there concerns of like, well, he's more of a slot guy than he is a boundary wide receiver?
Yeah. I think he could go as early as 13 to the Rams. I think he's somebody that would fit in Sean McVay, that Shanahan style of offense really well. Which is why I also think if he falls to 27, Shanahan's going to love it, right? Um, Now outside of that, outside of 13, I think the earliest he goes is probably Carolina, right? I don't think he goes anywhere else before like from 13 to 19. I don't think any of those teams are really looking at him. I think maybe the Jets, but I think they also are really high on Omar Cooper Jr., right? Um, so I don't think we would have to trade up for him. And then also, if the Jets do take him at 16 and Omar Cooper is still on the board, I think the Panthers will be fine taking Omar Cooper Jr. because I think they value those guys around the same, right? I think if you're looking at, I prefer Casey over Omar Cooper Jr., but at the same time, I think Omar Cooper is a really good receiver too. So um, I don't think they would trade up for him, but yeah, I could see him going 13 to the Rams. I think after that, there's probably a bit of a gap where he goes to the Panthers, but then after that is the Steelers at 21, the Eagles at 23. You got the Browns at 24, right? He could literally go in all those spots, and I think it would not be a reach.
We jumped kind of a bit early here, but yes, Blake Miller. So this is the one that, you didn't hear about him late earlier in the
Yeah.
year. It's like, okay, he's nice, probably a second or a third, and now all of a sudden, combine comes here, and teams go, well, we really need tackles. We need somebody who's finished. Is he a left tackle? That's gonna be the first question. Is he a NFL left tackle due to just the size and everything, or when you look at him, do you go right tackle, swing tackle? Yeah, this isn't the guy I want protecting the blind side.
I think he has the size for left tackle in NFL, right? 6'7". I think he has like 34 plus inch arms. So he hits all the measurements that you want from your left tackle. My biggest concern with moving a guy that's a right tackle and has been a right tackle for the majority of his career to left tackle at the highest level and saying, "Hey, you're switching over to a completely different side and you have to change all your mechanics and your technique." That is very concerning for me. I know he had probably, 100. He probably played 2 to 3 games at left tackle at Clemson, but he's been predominantly a right tackle. And for me, I think he's one of the safer picks at right tackle, right? But if you're talking about a left tackle, I don't know. I don't know if I would take him at and put him at left tackle day one. I think he's more of a right tackle. Let him play right tackle, see how it goes. If he excels at right tackle, leave him there. Um, I don't know if he's a left tackle, right? I think, for me, and we'll probably talk about where he goes. For me, I think somebody like a Detroit who takes him at right tackle, and because I've heard them, think about moving Panay Sewell to left tackle. Now, Panay Sewell is one of those rare occasions where this guy is so good at what he does, he will be fine at left tackle, similar to Tristan Wirfs moving from right to left. I don't view Blake Miller in the same regard. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but when you're talking about moving from right to left and not having any trouble and it's a seamless transition, you're talking about elite guys, generational type prospects. And Panay Sewell's one of those guys. Joe Alt's one of those guys. As good as Blake Miller was at Clemson, he's not on that in that category, right? So for me, he's offensive tackle 5. If you don't include Spencer Fano as an offensive tackle, he's offensive tackle 4 for me, right? So yeah, I think I have a second round grade on him, but I wouldn't be shocked if he goes in the first round.
So here's the question: did the Panthers take it at 19? Because you said there's nothing bad. It's not like Caleb Proctor. You're going, oh my god, oh my god, this guy might eat himself out of a league.
Yeah.
He's not Caleb Lowu or Spencer Fano, where it's like, oh my god, they're short arms, they're guards. No, no, you can't take a guard. He's not Monroe Freeling, where you're like, we haven't really seen much of him,
Yeah.
and we don't even know if he is that good or if it's just Georgia and their style. So again, if you're the Panthers and you're looking at Taylor Martin's getting up there, he's 31.
Yeah.
You might keep Rasheed Walker. Like, does Blake Miller make sense? Where it's like, okay, he is our right tackle of the future. We can move Martin for picks and to get more maybe like help on offense or defense. Like, does he fit in terms of like, well, he's not going to screw up. He's good. He's safe. He is like, just steak and eggs and orange juice for breakfast. It ain't pretty, it ain't flashy, but it's solid. It gets the job done.
Yeah. Does he make sense at 19? Yes, he does. Because like you said, with Taylor Moton getting up there in age, he's somebody that maybe not year one can slot in, but you bring him along slowly, let him be the swing tackle for year one, and then year two, you make him the full-time starter at right tackle. I think it definitely makes sense because you want to get cheaper at that position, you want to get younger at that position, so it definitely makes sense. The problem is, Dave Canales, Brent Tillis, Dan Morgan have all said the same thing when it comes to their 19th pick, the player that they take in the first round, they want to make sure he's immediate impact, right? And if this guy's going to be your swing tackle for the most part in year one, um, I don't think he's going to make the most impact for the team. Now, is he better than our current swing tackle, Stone Forsythe? Absolutely, he is. So you have more. You can sleep better at night knowing that your backup offensive tackle is Blake Miller compared to Stone Forsythe, but at the same time, when you're talking about somebody that is going to come in day one and make an immediate impact, he's probably not going to be that guy unless injuries occur, right? Um, so does he make sense? Yes. Do I think they do it? Probably not. I do think they're intrigued, right? They sent Joe Gilbert, their offensive line coach, to Clemson's pro day to watch him, and I think he led the drills. So obviously he's intrigued by Blake Miller. They're intrigued by Blake Miller, and I think they should be. He's a good player. But again, I think this is more of a trade back scenario for us. Like if you can get an extra second or third round pick and while adding Blake Miller, that's a win. That's a win. It's similar to Caden McDonald, Peter Woods, Avion Terrell. It's one of those guys where they make sense, but at 19 it's probably a little rich.
So I'll point on this. Do they take him because they know he probably doesn't get past the 49ers
Yeah.
or the Patriots, or even at worst case scenario, he probably doesn't even get past, a team that trades up, like maybe Tampa Bay or maybe the Saints go, we really need to tackle. All
Yeah.
right, and tackles go quickly. So again, would you blame them if they go, we can't pass up because tackle will be gone quick? It's like hotcakes. They go as soon as they get put out. So again, is it worth it if you know that if you pass on him and even Max Iankor,
Yeah.
you might not get other good tackle till maybe third round because they're all gone by that time. And
Yeah,
then
I
you use
think
Crown over as a guy you're probably going, we're
yeah,
not going to
that's what I'm
want that
saying.
guy.
Crown over Austin Barber, one of those guys in the third, fourth round. Um, yeah, I mean that could be a possibility too. And they brought in Max Ionanker for a visit, so obviously they're intrigued by him too. So yeah, it's something that is probably on their board, something that's in the back of their mind. It's like, hey, this is somebody that can be our left tackle, our right tackle for the future, 5+ years, right? And we're not going to be able to get him in the second round. Whereas we could get a wide receiver in the second round because it's a deep wide receiver class. We can get a wide receiver in the third round, whether it's, Brendan Thompson, Zachariah Branch, any of those guys. But we're not going to be able to get an offensive tackle. And if they're looking at it like that, then sure, take Max Ionanker or Blake Miller at 19 and call it a day. I'm not really a fan of going offensive line early because I know we already have our starters and I'm looking to draft a starter at 19. But from a big picture perspective, I get where people are coming from. Because like I said, they want to get younger, they want to get more uh uh get cheaper across the offensive line. So that's it makes sense. I wouldn't hate the pick because like I said, he's a good player. For me, if it was Caden Proctor at 19, then we're probably going to have some issues. I probably would be a little concerned with the way forward, but Blake Miller, I do like.
So it all comes down to Dan Morgan, and he's a shot caller. It's Dave Canales has input, but I'm guessing that Dan Morgan has final say over the 90-man roster, like a lot of GMs. So first, let's ask the question: how has he done, sort of in terms of talent? Because Young wasn't, Bryce Young wasn't his guy. He
Yep.
inherited that. So Leggett, to Troy McMillan is a home run, but that was almost like, well, even a blind squirrel could probably get that right. Like overall, when you look at him so far, how has he done? And do you have faith in him picking good players, or is it still like to be determined?
Yeah, I think his drafts right now, he's had two drafts and he's probably 1 for 2. So he's batting 500 because his 2024 draft Well, it wasn't good. It wasn't good, right? I think with Xavier Legette, Jonathan Brooks, and I'm a Jonathan Brooks believer, but he hasn't seen the field in 2 years, so you got to call that what it is. And right now, that's an F, right? You got Trevin Wallace, who probably is better served as your linebacker three, in a 3-4, right? He's not a starter. Jatavion Sanders is your tight end three currently, so he's not a starter. So you really haven't drafted a starter in your first year. So you can't say that was a good draft. That was a really bad draft. And I get it, you didn't have your first round pick. Cool. You were set up behind the eight ball. Still a bad draft, right? But his 2025 draft was one of the better drafts across the league. You got, like you said, you got T Mac at 8, which was great. You traded up to get Nick Scorton, who was one of the top 5 edge rushers in the class last year, who some people had, including myself, had a first round grade on Nick Scorton. And you got him in the second round. Princely Umami Princely was, I think if he saw the field more, he would have been better. I think, right now it's probably a C because he did make impact when he was on the field. He just didn't see the field a lot. And I think for him is because, he's still progressing, still getting better as a player. He's got to put on some weight, get stronger in the run game. ETN was he decent in the return game as far as kick return. So that was a good pick. But then you have Lathan Ransom. Lathan Ransom really showed a lot of promise last year. He's probably going to be a starter at some point this year, unless you add somebody in the draft. But he's somebody that I think eventually could potentially replace Trevon Morg, if not play next to him. So he was a good pick in the fourth round. So I'll give kudos to Dan for that one as well. Uh, what really has impressed me with Dan Morgan as far as drafting is who he gets in the undrafted free agent market. Jalen Coker is one of the better undrafted free agents, especially the wide receivers we've seen in a very long time. And people, if you're outside of Carolina, you don't know who Jalen Coker is. I get it, but he looked phenomenal in the Rams game in the playoffs. He looked phenomenal, and our offense actually, we were bottom 10 offense last year, but when we got Jalen Coker back, that offense took a step forward, right? Because Bryce Young felt more comfortable because he had somebody who caught everything. Jalen Coker is his possession receiver. He's his security blanket. He's somebody that on those fourth downs we target a lot. Outside of Tet, he gave us somebody else to target because before he was when he was injured the first 8 weeks of the year, we didn't have anybody else that was Bryce was comfortable throwing to. So he was able to add Jalen Coker in 2024. He was able to add Ryan Fitzgerald, the kicker, who had one of the better years for rookies this year. He added him in undrafted free agency. He added Corey Thornton, who again another undrafted free agent who got hurt against San Francisco, but before that was our number 3 cornerback, right? So that's 3 starters that he got in the undrafted free agent market. So you could say, between the undrafted free agents and his 2025 draft class, he's been a really solid general manager. But again, you have to hold him accountable for 2024 because he was still the general manager. Now, where he's excelled, and a little bit of this goes to Brant Tillis, uh, the cap guy in free agency, getting the guys we've gotten in free agency over the last 3 years is not something Carolina's used to. His first year he said, "Hey, our interior offensive line is bad. We have to fix it." He goes out, he gets um, Damian Lewis, who played at an all-pro level last year, and then Robert Hunt, who's been a Pro Bowler since he's been in Carolina, right? He got those 2 guys. That's 2 starters. Last year, he was able to bring in Trevon Moore, who was a top 10 safety last year. Um, he was able to get guys like Turk Wharton and Bobby Brown, who are probably not starters, but they're good depth, and it increased our run defense. The year before in 2024, we were one of the worst defense of all time. It wasn't even close, right? So he went out and got guys that were going to improve that. Well, now, did they make a catastrophic change? No, but we were middle of the pack. We were 15 to 18th across all major metrics last year for defense. So he definitely improved the defense in that. And then this year was probably a home run for anybody. Getting 4 starters, whether it was Luke Fortner, Rasheed Walker, Devin Lloyd, Jalen Phillips. And it's not like we had a ton of cap. I think we were able to work with like $50 million in cap for the entire offseason. And he was able to get 4 starters, and 2 of them were very high level starters. And you could argue that Rasheed Walker was a top 15 left tackle in the league last year, and we got him for 1 year, $4 million. So what I've seen from Dan Morgan in comparison to Scott Fitterer is night and day. I'm so pleased with where our franchise is going because of what he's been able to do. And I know a lot of people were not excited about him getting the job because they were like, well, he was the assistant general manager under Scott Fitterer, so he can't be that good. But and I like to tell people, if the vice president's not making the calls, the president is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the vice president is just there to clap hands and smile. That's literally it. That's all he was able to do as a assistant general manager. So now we're seeing what he likes to do, what he wants to do as far as being a general manager, and it's night and day difference. So I'm pleasantly surprised and pleased. I wasn't upset about him getting the job, but I did have my reservations, obviously so. But yeah, he's definitely put us in on the right track going forward. I think we're in a good position. I do like his pedigree. He's came from two of the better organizations in the league. He started off with the Seattle Seahawks, and we know they're one of the better organizations in football. And then also left and went and was, I think he was a assistant general manager for the Buffalo Bills as well. So another good organization. So I like what he's building. Hopefully he has another good draft like similar to 2025. And if that's the case, we're in a good position in the NFC South.
So, final question, we'll let you go. So, what is his, I guess the big question here is for him, like, what does he view the team as? Because, as he said, Dave Canales is probably going, we need offense. We are ready now. We nearly beat off, the Rams twice. Second, we have had, so he's probably going, get now, we get, impact guys. Hey, let's take a key messenger. He'll help me right away. He'll do this. He'll help me right away. We'll get this guy here. We'll help right away. Does Dan do that, or is he that guy, as you said, who's looking going, well, we're still a bit young. We still have another year off. We still need to slow the roll and build so that when we have to replace Tyler Moton or we have to replace, Mike Jackson, one of those guys, we have a piece ready to plop in and not just go, oh, next draft or next free agency, we got to sign, 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 sign.
I think for him, and what I've noticed with Dan, if he doesn't address it in free agency, he's going to address it in the draft, right? And that's been his philosophy since day one. Is he always says, we do free agency so we're able to take the best player available. So we're not focused on need as much in the draft, right? So if I'm looking at what he's addressed so far in free agency, he's addressed linebacker, he's addressed edge, he's addressed interior offensive line, he's addressed offensive tackle. Where does he still need to address the team? And it is tight end and it is wide receiver. He's came out and said it in his pressers, post free agency, and kind of said, hey, like these are the positions we're still looking to improve the team, right? It was safety, nickel, wide receiver, and tight end. And somebody asked him and said, "Is offensive line completely off the board?" And he said, "No, it's not completely off the board, but at the same time, like those are positions that we still have to address. We've addressed the offensive line position enough right now, and it's not like." And I get it. People are like, "Oh, it's smokescreen season." He's just saying that. Cool. I think with signing Rasheed Walker, with Akeem Aquanu progressing well. Now we don't know what it's going to look like 6 months from now, but as of right now, Akeem Aquanu, according to the medical staff, is progressing well. He's able to kind of maneuver, and his physical therapy is going really good post surgery. So there's some promise there. So if you have Rasheed Walker and Akeem Aquanu as your offensive tackles going forward, I think you also feel like you're in a good position. Now, do I think he would just take offensive tackle off the board completely? No, or else we wouldn't have brought in Max Ionaker and sent our reps to Blake Miller's pro day, right? So, and I think we also had people at Caden Proctor's pro day as well. So again, I think he's looking to improve the team as much as possible, but I don't think he's going based off of like knee jerk reactions.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we give you from the Panthers Pulse, the man who has his finger on the pulse of the Carolina Panthers and is in touch with what's going on and who's seeing what. I give you it is draft professor extraordinaire. Also, I give you Jordan Hunt. So, Jordan, once again, where can fans check you out at? Where is the Twitter, the Instagram, the website, probably a Substack, YouTube channel? Where can fans hit you up at?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm on Twitter, Panthers Pulse on Twitter, Pulse with a Z instead of an S, Panthers Pulse. I'm also on Substack. I try to put out, one to two articles a week. I recently put out my top 100. I put out an article regarding why the Panthers are in a position to potentially overtake the NFC South for the next few years. And then also recently, I think as of yesterday, I put out an article on why Kenyon Sadiq is the best fit for the Carolina Panthers. So again, I'm always willing to talk football, whether it's college, NFL, draft, free agency. I don't really. I obviously I'm a Panthers fan, but I don't have bias. If you go on my page, you're gonna see me talking to Falcons fans, Saints fans, because at the end of the day, Um, I understand that football is built with these teams the same way the Panthers are built for us. So I don't really discourage people from talking to me just because we're quote unquote rivals. I've given, Panthers very good praise this offseason, but I've also said that the Saints are a few pieces away from challenging us. And the same with the Falcons. So again, always willing to talk, always willing to collaborate like with Chris. He reached out. So again, thank you, Chris, for having me on. I appreciate you so much. So again, Panthers Pulse on Twitter, guys.
Jordan Hunt, ladies and gentlemen, once again, always on a pleasure to have you on the show. We come back. We've got a lot more going on here. Only on It's Last Call. Last Call at the alcohol. Only on the lastcallpodcast.com.